So, welcome to Courage, Dear Heart. This is Charli Wall, and I'm joined this week by Lucy Gordon, my lovely client. Lucy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
I'm all right. Yeah. I'm
Good.
good today. I've been out in the sun, so I feel good.
I know it's so hot here. Is it really hot where you are?
Yeah, especially chasing children around. Be carrying them up hills and everything.
So, I have the first question for you, my normal question that I ask everyone. So, I hope you don't mind me asking you.
Okay.
My podcast is called Courage, Dear Heart. What does courage mean for you?
So I wrote this down because I knew I would muffle it up. So courage for me is having the courage to honor your no when you really need to, but also knowing when the time is right to push through to create something different for yourself.
Ah, that's a really good answer because that leads me really nicely
Good.
into having the courage to do something different for yourself. Now, you work with me as a one-to-one client, yeah?
Yeah.
And so I imagine that took a little bit of courage for you to start that process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that comes into like self-worth because I probably had such little self-worth at that point that like I didn't feel like I was worthy of like spending that money on myself and giving myself that time and attention. So I think like it's something that I'd wanted to do for a long time, and I'd watched, like I'd like followed you, I think, and I'd seen that Simone was having coaching with you, and like the pull was there, but I just wasn't like taking the chance on myself at first.
What do you mean the pull was there? Can you describe what that was?
It was like because I followed lots of other coaches and lots of other like people, but I wasn't drawn to their philosophy and kind of, I guess, the way that they explain things. And it's like an energy thing for me as well. Like I can always tell from, I think I sent you a voice note and you sent me one back. And I don't know why, but like if someone's got quite a calming voice, like that's it, I'm sold. And I just remember like feeling really calm when I listened to a message. But obviously there's lots of other life coaches and I followed them, but I kind of felt like a lot of them, they were saying similar things, whereas some of the things that you'd shared was like a new perspective that I hadn't really heard of before.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
What was life like before you signed up? What was life like? Describe to the listeners and the ladies in the group what life was like for you before.
Stressful. I was always like, I was scared of everything basically, and was very hyper vigilant, which then I think made me quite erratic because when I'd get scared of things, it would come out as like irritability. So like I was very snappy because I was scared of things, and I'd have, which I didn't really know what it was called until we kind of spoke about it, like constantly having flash forwards of like really, like we spoke about this, didn't we, about really scary situations, almost playing out these like slideshows in my head constantly. And even though I knew like they'd never happened, I convinced myself that they would. So I had to keep myself safe. And obviously, I learned when working with you that when you're having these flash forwards, your body or your mind can't tell the difference. So even though it's not a real situation, you're putting yourself through that stress over and over and over again. And so again, like that's exhausting. I was just exhausted, emotional, and I just stopped doing so much because it was just too exhausting trying and then feeling depleted because I felt like I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I just want to expand on that because I talk about flash forwards and I was talking to you about it, and I talk to a lot of people about this. So for anyone that doesn't understand what we're talking about, for many years I had flashbacks, and the flashbacks were around an actual trauma and experience that I'd had, and I would go into like a sort of zombie mode. And then when I discovered the understanding that I teach and that me and you have talked about, I realized that when I was projecting my fear into the future, it was like, oh right, that's a flash forward. But nobody really sort of talks about that, because essentially a flashback is the past coming into the present and playing out as if I'm there, although I would have been in what I would call like a zombie mode. Same with the future events. So you were experiencing a lot of fear-based thinking about things that you'd never experienced, but that you'd seen maybe online, or one of the things.
That's it. The detail in them, like, it amazes me that our brains are so capable of that. Like, obviously our brains can be used for incredible things, but equally, like, your brain thinks it's trying to keep you safe. And I really felt like, and I can remember saying to you many times during our coaching, well, I don't want to not be scared, because then I feel like my guard's down and I'm not protecting myself. And then I remember seeing a quote, and it was, fear does not stop death, it stops life. And it really resonated, because I just thought, I'm literally like, that's everything came back to, like, I'm scared of dying, or someone I love dying, or like this really worst case scenario. But actually, like, I wasn't living my life there, I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do. And when I had kids, it became more apparent that, like, they're watching everything I do. And I grew up with a very anxious mum, and like, I get it now, I completely get why, but I just didn't want to carry that on, because I was a very, like, very, very anxious person for years, and I just don't want that for my children.
So you were very anxious for years. How did that also manifest? Was there anything else that was going on for you? I know you didn't like driving on the motorway. That's one of the things I remember.
Yeah, driving was a big one. So I just felt very, like, just trapped, not very free, felt like very codependent, because I'd rely on my partner for everything. And then I'd get very resentful, because he's a very independent person and he does all these things. And I did become quite resentful, because I just wanted so badly to be able to do those things and be that fun parent that goes to, like, the new places and that, but I just could not get my head around the fear of going on motorways. And that stemmed from, because I've driven for 11 years now, and I used to drive on motorways, and it stemmed from one little incident where my windscreen blurred up and I couldn't see, because I had a new car and I couldn't work out how to get, like, the mist off, and it obviously embedded in my mind, and it was just like this block of, like, every time I even thought about going on the motorway, I was just like, absolutely not.
Yeah. No, I remember you talking about that.
Yeah.
Had you tried anything before you got the courage to get in touch with me? Had you tried anything else to help you with any of this stuff?
I'd done CBT a couple of times. And the first time I did that, I thought it was great. But then eventually what would happen is, like, I think I tried it 3 times. And when I started that, like, quite a few years ago, there wasn't like a waiting list and such like there was now.
Yeah.
I did it, and it would help a little bit, but then it would fade and I'd go back. And then I felt like when I went back after that, it didn't last as long, because I did it over the phone, not in person. And then after that, I just didn't feel like it really worked. I don't know, it just felt like I'd become a little bit immune to it. But apart from that, because then what happened was, I don't know if it was after lockdown, but all of a sudden there was just a waiting list, like, you couldn't self-refer quickly anymore. And I think that's what it was. I thought, well, that's the only thing really that they recommend. It's always CBT for anxiety. And I kept saying, well, I feel like rather than CBT, I'd like to talk to someone. And the doctor just kept saying, oh, I don't think counselling is that's not really what we recommend for anxiety. What we recommend is CBT. But apart from that, just things like meditation. But again, it's the adding on of stuff, isn't it? I felt then I would beat myself up because I couldn't sit and concentrate, and I wasn't having these like big epiphanies that people think they get when they meditate. So I would just get frustrated that it wasn't really working.
So when you came to me, you were anxious, frustrated, feeling trapped, feeling like there wasn't much help out there, and you'd seen Simone talk about me, and you were following other life coaches, and you're quite active on Instagram. Are you able to tell us your handle? Do you mind doing that, or do you not want to do that?
No, it's the _unschooling_way.
Okay, well, if you okay, I'll put that in the show notes as well, because I really love your Instagram, because you're a homeschooling mum, aren't you?
Yes.
And you talk very beautifully about that. So you'd watched me for a little bit, you were feeling a bit fed up, frustrated, a bit like there wasn't any hope, and then I popped up. And you reached out to me and you signed up.
Yeah.
Did you hesitate at all before you signed up?
Not at that point, no, because I feel like it was like crunch time then. Like I'd just like had an awful couple of months. I lost a friend, and I'd had like some other stuff going on, and I feel like I was like kind of at breaking point, and I'd like that the months leading up to that, I was just like, this is literally going to be my life forever if I don't sort it out. And I could feel like my mental health getting worse, and just felt like hopeless, really. So I feel like for me at that point, I knew like I've got to do something.
Okay, so then we embarked on our coaching relationship. Can you tell me about that? How was your experience of that?
Amazing. I feel like I know, like from speaking to friends, a lot of people kind of worry about starting things because a lot of layers get peeled back. It's never just that surface level. You're kind of like cracking open so much. I feel like I was ready for that, and I had kind of learned a lot before about healing, and you know that it does come in layers. So I knew that's what I needed to do. And I think as I've gotten older, and a lot of like my friends have got kids, I kind of stopped talking to people as much, because I got into this mindset of like they've got their own problems, and you can kind of tell sometimes like people aren't able to hold that space. You don't want to put it on them. So like having that safe space, and for me knowing that like once a week I had that hour to just let everything out with no judgment, like from a non-biased person, was like really amazing for me, because I feel like it got me through the week. I was just like, right, it's just let it go, because on Thursday you can like get some clarity. But like I think what the lovely thing about you is that like you're helping people to come back to themselves. It's not looking outside of themselves. Like you would always, there'd be things that I'd ask you and you'd be like, well, I can't answer that for you. And like would get my brain ticking, and I'd be like, I knew you was going to say that. Just wanted to try my luck. But like it would get my brain ticking and thinking about things in a different way.
Well, as part of the package you got access to me via Marco Polo. How was having me in your back pocket, like as well as the session once a week? What was that like?
Yeah, really helpful. Yeah, because I feel like obviously at the beginning, but there's a lot of like crying, and like a lot of, it was like I was really emotional in the beginning, but then as we kind of went along, I feel like a lot of like I would message you just the things I was curious about, or like things that I needed picking apart, and like I was able to replay the messages as well. So some of them I'd like listen to a few times, and it's just like having a friend with you 24/7, which obviously you don't always have now. So I feel like it helped me massively.
Yeah, good. And I think the reason I use that is because what I find is that people they kind of talk to me on there, and then they tend to end up answering their own query.
Yeah, you said that to me a lot, and I think as well with that is like, if you just like, you know, with the Marco Polo, you're there in the moment. So like with me, I'd get really emotional about something, and then maybe by the time our session came round, it's not a big thing anymore, because I'm very like in my feelings in the moment. And then when I feel better, I maybe wouldn't have brought it up, so it kind of gets pushed to the side and forgotten about. Whereas actually having the Marco Polo, like in the moment, I would message you and I'd get like clarity on that there and then it's like, okay, that's like, I've dealt with that now.
Yeah.
Getting squashed down and down and down, and then, you know, you've got an hour where you kind of maybe don't bring all these things up. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, and then it gives me, I can store them, you see, and piece all the little dots together, because the seemingly irrelevant stuff is actually quite layered. So yeah, I'm really pleased that you said that. Can you tell me what the insights were that changed your experience? Can you remember what they were?
Yeah, so a big one was, so I had like growing up quite a volatile like household, and one of the big things that obviously we spoke about was like just this, I just had this feeling of just never feeling safe, whether it was in my home, whether I was out, like I just never felt safe. I was always hypervigilant. And as we kind of like peeled those layers back, I think you said to me in one of the sessions, because I'd constantly be checking my doors, like the locks over and over again. I wouldn't have any of the windows open, even in like the height of summer, like we'd be boiling because I'd just be too scared to have the windows open. And obviously this caused like tension even with me and Rob, because he was like, this, Lucy, this is ridiculous. And he understood it, but obviously it was impacting him as well. And then I think you said to me once, like, you know, because I think it was this thing about people coming into my space. And we spoke about how when I'd been at home, there'd been, you know, siblings coming into my space and taking things. And you said, is it any wonder that your now prized possessions, you know, it's not a sibling taking perfumes and things, this is transferred to you feeling unsafe with your children, who are like, you know, not possessions, but they're the most precious thing in your life. And so if you didn't feel safe in your home as a child and you've never felt safe, this is essentially wired in your brain. And that was like a light bulb. And honestly, you know, I might have the odd off day if I've had too much caffeine or whatever, but ever since that, I'm not obsessive like I was about it anymore. Like I'll check the doors, I'll check the windows are shut at night, and it does not play on my brain. And that was like the biggest light bulb ever.
Yeah, no, I remember I remember your face when that dropped in for you, and it was a wonderful moment.
And it's such a like, I think I was just like, how have I never thought of that? Like but I just hadn't made that connection. And then that's how I knew, like, that's the truth essentially, because it just, whatever was wired in my brain, it was like it just got unplugged.
Yeah, well, that's an insight, right? That's something that came from within you. I can point you in that direction, but literally the truth comes from within you. That's what happened to me. I was like, oh, right. Like I've been doing all this mental stuff because I didn't realize I was actually safe. So that was an incredible insight. What else has changed for you? What's life like now?
So I have driven on the motorway probably the last month, probably more than I ever have in my whole life. And again, that was just such an odd, I don't know if like the timing of that was when our coaching came to an end. I feel like I must have had this insight of like, okay, you don't have Charli there 24/7 now. Like you have to put into practice everything that you've learned. And it's very odd because it wasn't even a thing of like, oh, I'm absolutely petrified, but I've got to make myself do this. when I actually did it and I started going on the motorway, I was calm. And I never had, like, you know, there'd been the odd 10 minutes where I'd been diverted and I had to go on the motorway. I would tense up, I would panic, I would be like, nobody talk to me. I would literally be like eyes on the road, like a statue when I was driving along, and I'd feel nauseous. And now, like the other week, I actually drove all the way to Surrey, which is like the other side of the world for me. Like that's a really long journey. And I really enjoyed it, because I think where I've had so long of going the long way round, driving miles out of my way, using God knows how much petrol that I don't need to use, it was like, oh my God, like how difficult have I been making my life? Like this is so much easier. And now I've just been doing it without even thinking about it. And it's like the most freeing thing. Like, and I just get in my car now. I don't overthink it. I just put the postcode in and I'm like, they're all just roads. Roads are not that dissimilar. Like, and I just haven't had any thinking about it, but it's very strange. And I feel like it's going to take me a long time to get used to it, because it was the opposite for such a long time.
It's
But
incredible.
yeah, and I think it's given me, like, it's helped me a little bit of my self-worth as well, because I think, you know, it's not a nice thing to say, but we had a lot of conversations around, because I didn't feel like I could do that, I really started to feel like a bit of a burden and on people, and just feel like I, you know, start berating myself and saying that I'm useless. And actually, like, I've felt really proud of myself for doing it, and I felt like I've got a little bit of myself back.
Yeah, you have. It's
Mm.
incredible. It's not silly. It's such an innocent misunderstanding, because it's lots of thought which creates tension in the body, and now you've got freedom from that. So it's like, wow, this is, you know, of course it's going to feel strange to someone who's had thinking about it since, I don't know if you had thinking about it before the mist, but
I don't, not as much. I think definitely a little bit came on because all of a sudden I had this precious little baby who was so tiny, and it's like, you're not just
yes.
responsible for yourself anymore, are you? Like, it's a huge responsibility being a parent, and you love your kids so much, you do anything to protect them. But I am starting to realize, like, you can wrap them up in bubble wrap and you think you're protecting them, but actually, like, it's gonna suffocate them later on. And I had experience around that, but actually it's been really lovely, because I get it now, and I do have a lot more understanding for my parents. And I think it's just that thing, like, I always come back to, when someone else is not scared of something and I'm starting to feel scared of something, I have that little voice in my head of, like, they're in a completely different reality to you,
Yeah.
and they're looking through a different lens, and all you have to do is change your lens. And I kind of have that conversation in my head now, like, just put a different lens on.
Yeah, different pair of glasses.
Yeah, yeah. And I think before this, like, I never would have described myself as a visual person, but the more, like, I imagine, like, when I'm doing something, when I'm driving now, I'm like, every time you do this and you go to a new place and you go a little bit further, you're literally rewiring your brain, and that actually really helps me to just do the thing.
Yes, and that's exactly what you are doing every time. Every time you take a new path, you're rewiring your brain, which for a lot of people has been wired for many, many, many years. And that's why they don't often realize that change is possible, but also change is scary, because they're used to it being a certain way, and your brain's going to convince you to stay the same.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I think when you, like, losing my friend, and then, like, my granddad's really ill at the moment, like, I'd never really experienced grief like that before, because people I'd lost, I'd been too young to really understand it. And that's, like, massively changed my perspective as well, because I just think, like, life is there to be lived, and I just don't ever want to, like, look back and say, like, I didn't live as fully as I could.
Yeah. Oh, that's very beautiful. Thank you. Is there anything else that's changed for you? Your relationships, your anything? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I think, no, I think like touching on relationships, like I'm definitely better at communicating now. Like it is hard because like I'm very stubborn sometimes, but I do feel like people aren't mind readers, and I've kind of realized that if you don't vocalize something, you can't expect them to know. Like, because of knowing this whole thing about how everyone's lens is different, I kind of have that realization. Like I used to get really frustrated with my partner, now husband, and I'm very much like, he's not doing it to be frustrating. He's not doing it to make you feel rubbish. Like he is just living life from a different lens. He's had different life experiences. And actually, like, I find that quite inspiring now. And
oh my gosh, that's amazing.
yeah. So that's helped a lot.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Just in time for your wedding.
Yeah. Stuck with me now, because I have to be more understanding. Because that all filters down, like that filters down to our children and their children. Like just remembering that thing of like every time you make a change, like it ripples out. So that's a big for me.
It does ripple out, and it will continue to ripple out, and that's such a gift to give yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
What would you say to anyone who was considering working with me?
Don't think about it too much.
Don't do it.
Do it. Yeah, because you'll never know like how much power is in you until you start unraveling it. It's like an unraveling, isn't it? I think when I signed up, I didn't think I would grow as much as I have. Like a year goes by very quickly. And like actually when I look, and do you know what, I've kind of realized this lately, because when my granddad has been quite poorly, so when I signed up with you, like I feel like I just used to cry all the time. Like I was really down, and that was quite normal for me. So I don't think I really realized it. I was just really, really down. And because now I deal with things a lot better, and I'm able to rationalize things a lot better and have these little like conversations with myself, where my granddad is kind of, he's got stage 4 cancer. So he's kind of, maybe only got like a week left. I've been crying a lot. I'm really emotional. And it kind of had that little thing in my head of like, wow, I used to be like this all the time. And like with this, it's grief, so it's very justified. And my granddad is like one of the biggest people in my life and always has been. So I let them feelings come. I know they're very normal, but I would feel like that just about everything in life. And there wasn't a lot of enjoyment in between. And what enjoyment was like, before having kids, was just going out and masking over it with drinking and partying and squashing it down. Whereas now, like I like welcome those feelings, and I do let them come, because I know that they're always going to pass. It's like the analogy you use of the clouds. Like I always remind myself of that, like this is going to pass. It might not feel like it now, and it might feel like the clouds have been here forever, but like they do always pass. And that helps me like get through things. And I feel like if I'd known that then, my life would have been so different up until that point.
So if someone's struggling at the moment, which I'm sure that there are, what advice would you give them?
I would say, like, don't be afraid to sit with your feelings, because they are just that, they're always going to pass. I think people squash things down. They think we live in like a culture of quite like toxic positivity at times, and you don't realize how debilitating it can be. Like they need to come out, and you need to like feel the full expression of being a human to appreciate when the good times come, is what I think. Like I can be sad, but then I know like I'll have times where I'm like belly laughing and I'm having the most amazing time. You're not gonna be like this all the time, because that's not what being a human is. Like, if you're like that all the time, you're not living. Is yeah. I think I read something like that once. It was like, you know, on the, it might have even been you that told me, on the life machine where it goes up like that, and it's like, was it you? Yeah, it was.
Don't know.
It might have been someone else. I might have been a quote I read, but or a doctor said something, you know, this is living. And if you're just flatlining and you're not feeling anything, like, you're already gone. It's not living. And that stuck with me.
Mm. Yeah, well, we're all human, right? So we're meant to feel the whole range of emotions, you know, the colors of the rainbow, but what we actually have is that light, that spark, that guide inside, which is constant. Everything else is changeable.
Yeah. And those insights that we spoke about, I think that's the other thing that I wanted to say, is those insights came at that time when I was giving myself space and not feeling the space. And I saw Simone shared something about this the other day, and it reminded me, because I think when I'm so busy with the kids and I home ed and I'm running the house, and like the kids are up so late at night, like I then get time to myself, and it's an automatic habit in me to fill it by reading or podcasts or looking for answers, when actually, like, those insights I had and all that clarity came when I was just sitting with a cup of tea and doing nothing, and my mindset was so different, and I was getting these nuggets of information, and I was like, oh my god, like, all these epiphanies, that makes so much sense. But when I get out of that and I go back to fill in the space again,
Yeah,
I feel cloudy, I get brain fog, I'm irritable, I'm snappy, and I'm not at my best.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's such an important nugget of wisdom to share with everybody, because it's a very feminine trait to fill your space. And this literally is subtractive psychology. Like, you have the answers, you have the wisdom, like, it's always inside you. And if we don't trust that, if we don't trust that we have something that only us can have, we're constantly looking out there for ideas and answers and fixing, and you know, we do get cluttered, and then we collapse, you know, and then we start again and go up and get cluttered and then collapse. And it's just you know, an experience I'm sure many of the people listening to this will resonate with. So thank you for allowing yourself that space to be able to experience your true nature, your own wisdom.
Yeah, it's a process, like, to learn to sit with yourself, isn't it? Like, because we're in a society of like do.
Yeah,
You have to practice being okay with just being with yourself, because you're never going to get the answers that you want if you don't.
yeah. And I remember listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza a few years ago now, and he describes this. He's going, just sit and notice that little fucker going, pick up your phone, go pick up a magazine, you need something, go do. And it was like, I did it when I first started doing this myself, and it's like,
Yeah, yeah. I have to leave my phone downstairs now, like on the odd occasion where the kids go to bed a bit earlier. If I want to read, I have to leave my phone down, because I started telling myself that story of like, I can't read anymore, I get distracted, like all of these stories that you tell yourself.
yes,
But it's just a habit. And so I
yes,
leave it down there, and I just, if I want to read and I do feel the pull to read, then I will just sit and read without my phone, because it's too easy to pick it up otherwise, isn't it?
very easy. That's what it's designed for. That's a whole other topic.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you so much, Lucy. It's been really, really wonderful to see you and hear you, and for you to share your experience. I'm very, very grateful. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we cut it off?
No, I don't think so. I think I've said everything. But yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're always welcome, Lucy. And it's an honor. It's been an honor and an absolute joy. So thank you very much. Say goodbye to the people in the group if you want to. Bye. Guys, if you're watching this, I can't see the group, but if you are watching this, please let us know. If you're watching this later in the group, please let us know what you think. If you're listening to the podcast, I'll put the link to Lucy's Instagram and the group where I do all these podcast live episodes. For now, I want to say goodbye and thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much, Lucy, for being here. Bye.